Hello, this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy, HealthAlchemy. This is video blog week 27, and I'm going to call it Compassion. I'm also going to call it The Return, maybe the return to normalcy that is the path for us all. And when I first heard I'm going to be reading from a book called Return of the Bird Tribes by Ken Carey, and this was read at a men's gathering, over 150 men that I was at about 18, 19 years ago. And I'm sharing this because it appears a bit woo-woo and the book is a bit channeled, but there's always some wisdom being spoken from these inner parts of ourselves. If channeling is nothing more than what we see already inside ourselves as our highest potential, then so be it, because there seems to always be wisdom in these things. And as my teacher and many others have taught me, the truth is self-evident. And there's the big truth with the T that applies to us all, and there's the smaller truths that apply to each of us individually that are a bit relative and subjective. And I love the statement that I'm learning more and more lately, and that's both and. Either or is a dualistic way of thinking. Both and embraces all and tends to offer a bit more of a sense of relaxation inside. So here we go. And keep in mind that awareness has now been proven, consciousness has now been proven to not be attached to a brain. And when I speak this, this is a larger awareness speaking, but through a human being, but also through some Native Americans, the bird tribes. I remember the day when I walked across the open prairie with my head held high and my feathers blowing in the wind. The soldiers saw only my silhouette against the sky. I walked slowly towards them, arms extended from my side, palms facing them in a gesture of peace. I watched the waves of love emanate forth from my hands, as powerful as the love I expressed before and after Golgotha. The soldiers shot me dead. I knew they would. But the children have been brought up on my teachings, have loved my spirit, and have understood enough of my creative principle to sail to the moon. Could I have taught them in any other way when their bullets flew and my feathers blew in the breeze that day? Could I have spoken more plainly than through the example of my deeds? I have died a million deaths and lived as many lives to teach the warrior tribes what they would not learn in any other way. In the end, I am the victor because the warrior tribes are changing fundamentally, while I rise again and again, leading them ever and ever onward toward their destiny amongst the midnight stars. The warrior tribes, Craig's note, warrior tribes, the white man is often referred to by the Native Americans as having a disease, or the disease of the white man, and this disease is being cured by wakefulness and consciousness and acting from our heart and our gut, and not the storyteller in our mind. Back to the book. I live everywhere, all over the earth. I have memories to draw upon wherever there were gentle people through whose lives I knew the land. If I try, I can remember their place names, their faces, the streets of their villages, their dances around the autumn fires when the forest floor smelled of dry leaves and moonlight-filtered shadows through the naked trees. But other things I do not have to try to remember, because those things I can never forget. I am those things. I am often the mountain lakes, because these were the last places my people lived before they flew, before they left their human forms and took to the airs of spirit or realms of nature to wait for the cycles and changing seasons to bring their time to the world again. I could show you where 500 people lived in the shores of one such lake. You might glimpse a human only occasionally, as you might see an otter, beaver, or raccoon. So blended were their ways and so in harmony with the earth and sun their living. By the time of which I speak was long before the recent European migrations, long even before civilizational influence touched Olmec or Mayan heart. Our cultures were pacific then in this undiscovered world, between troubled Asians and warring Europeans. Your records speak little of the Americas, because until recently our cultures here did not create history. Our ways were simple. Our troubles, until 2,500 years ago, were few. Only a few of our consciousness have dressed in human form these past 2,500 years. Yet when we did, you could not distinguish us from the others. We did not fight. When I put on my headdress and rode my horse across the prairies, I was teaching. I was not fighting. I taught with feather-shafted arrows and landscapes that cradled the sunlight in 1,000 sacred meanings. I drew the cavalry to the prettiest valleys to drink from the streams most likely to give them the truth, so that their children would grow up in the hills near these streams and eat the corn and summer squash that would teach them the wisdom their tribe had forgotten. So I do not mind the time my hands were spread to the side, a soldier fired and a body died. Lying there beneath the open sky with the high prairie grass waving around me as they rode off in dust and disarray, I drew those bullets into something deeper than a body of soil and stream. I drew them into my soul, and my spirit flew to their source. I understood then what factories made those bullets, what kind of factories made those bullets, what kind of women and children worked in those factories. I understood how they felt about their families as they were pouring the lead, how they regarded their land, what they thought of their fathers and their mothers and their grandmothers, and the tumbling, billowing, rolling with them in their jumbled tribal consciousness like the towering thunderheads that massed over the prairie. I too dreamed their dreams, found in them what was true, and made it my own. By digesting their metal words, I learned further the teachings that would speak to the warrior heart. I taught them of electronics, of radio waves whispering wonders on the wind, of metal wings and material things that would lead them down the slow but certain path to wisdom. Again, time after time before, I strengthened the educational influence, and I have been weaving in, around, and among their societies, while I drew them gently ever onward to their destiny. You thought you could shoot the dwellers of the prairies and forests, and they would disappear somehow, like a troublesome dream. You did not realize that they are my own, just as you are, as they would reappear in your children and your children's children, and, as your own people, live again. For, like you, the Native Americans of recent centuries have also been of warrior descent, with lessons to learn not unlike your own. This is not always so. Once we expressed to an American people whose societies saw our creations flower and flow like living brushstrokes across the river valleys, lakes, and forested mountains of 2 continents. Listen, and I will tell you of my kind, of the few who have remained to teach and guide you through your twilight age. I will tell you of our patient work as century by century we brought the fearful ones closer and closer to the time of their deliverance and the time of the earth's salvation. It goes on and on and on, and I'm going to stop there because it's, in my opinion, in my judgment, it's a bit rambling, but it speaks to this compassion, this thing about the soul. When the soldiers fired a bullet and a body died, there's something about, in my experience also, about really taking in someone and not pushing it away, because all pushing away is another desire. And that's why the Buddha said that all suffering is from attachment and aversion, because all aversion is another desire to not have. So it's all bound in desire of some sort in the dualistic world. And we are at the end of a twilight age, whether we like it or not. The things I see around me, I find greatly disturbing, and that people do shoot others to think they can get rid of their troublesome dream reflected in the outer world. But compassion is the way to go. And as the Christian mystics say, let thine eye be single. That's a great pointer, because when thy eye is single, there is no division, and there's a greater embrace of all, both and. So the ones who would destroy us, the ones who plant the chemtrails in the sky, the ones who divide up the earth and plan for slavery, if that's the way it is, the ones who give us vaccinations, they're in need of love too, because they're the ones expressing the shadow that is being integrated, and an inevitability of where we're all headed together. So whether the earth survives or humankind survives is irrelevant. because there's a dream larger than this dream. And none of it matters except to each of us as individuals, because we are our own universe. And what they're expressing here is compassion, and that's what Ken Carey is channeling here, is compassion. And the book in and of itself is perhaps worth a read. I've read through it many, many years ago, and I still have it on my shelf because that one quote so profoundly affected me 18 years ago. The whole audience was in tears. 150 men, you could imagine, at least 100 of them crying openly. I still cry when I read it because it's that moving to me, that there, whether that's true or not, but whether there is a being that walked across the plains and was shot and had that compassion to actually feel the bullet go into his being and draw who poured that lead, what they felt, how they felt about their parents and the earth. That's fairly profound. It's the kind of compassion that I heard a Tibetan Lama once say when after he was tortured for 30 years by the Chinese, and someone asked him what he feared the most and if he hated his captors, and he said, I didn't hate my captors. What I feared was losing my compassion for them. That's one of the most profound things I've also ever heard. And I believe the Dalai Lama once said that nothing is worth taking us out of our state of inner peace. And that's a high level thing to try and live by in today's world, especially because there are lots of things that take us away from our inner peace. I know I have mine, and I'm not perfect, but I'm working towards that. And sometimes there's an edge of you have to put yourself, I'll use an I statement. Sometimes I have to put myself at risk of feeling lack of ease in order to speak a truth, and my truth. And whether that speaks to another person about their truth or not is irrelevant. Is that some things that being vulnerable and being angry are sometimes necessary, and making a mess is sometimes necessary, because ultimately it's all good and we can clean it all up. So this is Video Blog week 27, just past the halfway point in the year, just past the brightest, lightest part of the year, and now we have the full summer ahead of us. Ponder these words, if you may, and let their meaning sink in, because we live in a time of great, great miracles and a time of great, great suffering and pain. And see if you can find a place in yourself that is undivided, where thine eye is single. Craig Lane signing out with Health Alchemy.